Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome to the last episode of Temmeros to Arturo, if I'd still gone with that naming convention, which got old really fast and was exceptionally stupidly long, so I'm glad that I gave that up. Anyways, here we go, working over the last texturing bits between here and the bottom of the mountain, more or less. I don't know why I started out doing this. You know, it turned up being about an hour of footage, which was respectable. I knew it was going to be a shorter episode, and I could have bumped this thing up to about 400% to give myself more, or rather less time to talk, because there's not really much I need to talk about. I could go on another tirade about Providence, and I know there were a couple of loose ends from last week that I didn't quite tie up, but other than that, I don't really have much to talk about. Except, of course, the fact that this is the last episode that we're, last episode for this section, so that means we're going to be voting on what to do next time. Now, the next run session is episode 113, so we've got a little while until then, probably time enough for me to get down a decent amount of the track work and stuff for the next section, whatever that is. And I'll just lay down your options here. I'll go over them very briefly, and then I'll go back and do each more in detail, and then I'll give them a little abbreviation for you to post in the comments. And if you need to figure out what stuff is, then you can go back and figure out exactly what that is. In the video, I mean. So, we've got Arturo. That opens up another branch, I guess you could call it. We've got two things coming off of Kapst, we've got two things coming off of Arturo, and we've got we've got one thing coming off of Temmeros, and one thing coming off of Zanzibar, so that makes for a total of 6 different options. You notice how this is just climbing exponentially, the amount of options we have here as we create connections. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where we start scaling back and running out of things, but unless we play our cards right, we're not going to get any fewer options next time around. Now, the first thing on the table, of course, is Temmeros to Portal. This has been on the table, of course, since day 1, and it consists of the southern exit to the map. It also, right now, includes, or is bundled with, but wait, there's more! Temmeros will be rebuilt when I go through and do this. I will, go ahead and make sure that the switches are not terrible. I'm going to go and redesign the city. I have a little bit more experience doing that stuff now since I built Troy in TRS 2012 for the Iron Horseman Chronicles, which is coming along quite well. I finished all the track work for Lee's line, but that's not really something to talk about right now. It's filler, if I need it, towards the end. Now, that's the first option. The second option is out of Galgora. That is the 2-foot gauge up into the hills there, 3-foot gauge up into the hills there. It's, Galgora, formerly Zanzibar, to Lambit. That's a logging line, and it has a connection as well. The Temmeros to Portal would, of course, be a dead end, more or less, so to speak. But, Galgora to Lambit would be all over the, would present one more opportunity. It would add 1 and subtract 1, so we'd have the same amount. We'd have 6 options. But that is a climb up 300 feet out of Zanzibar, out of Galgora, sorry. I'm looking at the name on the map. Out of Galgora to Lambit. It also is bundled with the rebuild of Eldorado Canyon. But that's not something I'd be real keen on doing, and it's not particularly interesting anyways, so. Anyways. There are 2 coming out of Kapst Junction. The, northerly route and the southerly route. The southerly route, actually, is a dead end as well. It is, Kapst Junction to Olerston. Olerston is another logging place, so when we're all said and done, if you pick either Kapst Junction to Olerston or, Galgora to Lambit, you'd be ended with a place to farm logs. A place to haul logs from. That is actually pretty much a flat and level thing. It's just dodging through both cleared and uncleared sections of forest. etc. The other one is Kapst Jct to Motico. Now, Motico is an interesting place. Motico is one of two large narrow gauge yards, servicing facilities, and also has the only lumber mill on the map, actually, not just on the 3-foot gauge. Motico is on the border of a river that's coming down from Scrag Cap, blah blah blah. We got some stuff there. We've got, and that opens up two possibilities. It opens up Motico to Scrag Cap, which is the highest point in the map, more or less. And it opens Motico to Meast, which needs a new name, but I'll save that for when I get there. And Meast is directly north of Arturo, and they connect. So, now the grades between Kapst Jct and Motico are some of the lowest grades on the map. Motico to Meast, however, is not. Once again with the heavy stuff going downhill, empty trains are more likely to be brought up, and full trains are more likely to be brought down, because you've got your stuff being refined at high places. Demper, your oil refineries is at 300 feet, and everything it connects to is lower, more or less. Thames is your coal mine, and Vale is your other coal mine. Vale isn't particularly high, but Thames really is. Olerston and Lambit are both higher up than most of the stuff around them, and where the loads get taken. So the point is, the heavy stuff is going to be traveling downhill in this map, sort of to alleviate the need for a lot of power to haul very heavy trains uphill constantly. We all know how bad TARDIS Pass is, and the like. But that's one of the longer stretches between towns, between Temmeros and Arturo. Just because that's just the way it is. So yeah, and then finally is Arturo to Meast, as was mentioned. Arturo to Meast is one. That's a cargo transferring point, and it's halfway to the lumber mill, more or less. Or Arturo to Hapston Cliffs, which is the other yard that the narrow gauge has. Now, to go over them all in more detail. Temmeros to Portal. I don't really know what other detail this could have. As I've said before, it is a downgrade slightly. It is a slight downgrade to the double-track Portal. It's a double-track main line, runs out of Temmeros, standard gauge, of course, and hits the tunnel fairly soon after. It allows me to build the last connection on the southern side of the map for the 2-foot gauge, which connects a little spur near Sterling Hill to Sterling Mount to a farm, and also connects the standard gauge to said farm as well. Some of the little tucked away jewels that you can't actually access right now because there's no tracks going to it. Basically gives the only other route out of Temmeros some use. Now, the reason you'd vote for this, I guess, well, other than the rebuild of Temmeros, which is nice, is if you want to have access to a portal for whatever you're running when you're fiddling with the alpha, or for the run sessions. Now, as I've said before, you're going to want to pick what you're going to want to run, because now that the alphas are going out and stuff like that, it's going to be a whole different ballgame with not what you think would be interesting to see me build, but what you think would be interesting to play around on. Episode 113, you will of course be granted another version of the alpha, and it will have whatever progress I've made on this new section up to that point. So, that's that. Now, Galgora, to Lambit. that is going to be an interesting thing to run. The problem with picking it right off the bat is it is completely disconnected from all other 3-foot gauge, well, that we have built at the moment. So you're not going to get much in terms of a more expansive system, unless, of course, you're like Milky and you replace all the standard gauge with, or you replace all the narrow gauge with standard gauge. Don't be like Milky. But, it would probably also force me to reorder some of the things in Galgora, but, that's not really the highest priority. Galgora itself is kind of, that's something I need to do. In my run session, I need to do something in Galgora to show off how to properly use the shunting mechanisms and stuff. Because the things that I built into Galgora, I thought I was, pretty smart for building it the way I did, but it's so unorthodox that people are go in and, Point of fact is I'm not really that smart. And that I built something weird that nobody knows how to use. And if I show it off a little bit, I'm sure that, it'll make sense. Or at least, either it'll make sense to you guys, or I'll understand why it doesn't. I sort of understand why it doesn't, it's just very weird. It's unorthodox. It's not how you would normally shunt. Now, Zanzibar to Lambit is, quite a climb, actually. I'm not sure how bad the grades will be, but suffice to say, they're probably not going to be very good. The real bonus here is the rebuild of Eldorado Canyon, which has currently upwards of 6% grades in some places, which is terrible. And I know how I could make it better because I left a flat section in the middle of the canyon, which is a problem. I mean, it enables you to kind of catch your breath, so to speak, when you're climbing the hill, but it cuts back on the space that you have. Now, with the scale that I already have for the Temmeros Vale and Anaconda Railway, it presents a problem to build these gradients anywhere, because, well, just because the heights are too great for the distances. Now, the two pairs of twins. Now, that's Kapst Jct to Olerston, or Kapst Jct to Motico, Arturo to Meast, or Arturo to Hapston cliffs. Once again, with the Arturo to Hapston cliffs, you've got the same problem as you do with the Galgora to Lambit. You get more 3-foot gauge, which is nice, but as it stands, it's completely disconnected from the rest of the 3-foot gauge. It's a climb of 300 feet, just like Zanzibar at Galgora. Please forgive me. Galgora to Lambit, as is Arturo to Hapston cliffs, the grades are not good. It's probably worse, because it's a lesser distance. But I can probably tweak some stuff there to get it to be not as bad. The draw for Hapston cliffs is, first, it's a very large yard, as far as narrow gauge goes. And it has some of the most stunning views on the layout, because it was called cliffs for a reason. It is on a cliff. It has a huge drop off, and then if you could see as far as you could, and if you could see through Tudor's Mount, which is right there, you'd be able to see Lambit down in the valley below. The other thing with Hapston Cliff, the advantage of it, it gives you somewhere to get wood chips from to supply Arturo, because you could just leave full wood chips cars there for now. It also opens up 2 other possibilities. Now, it opens to the north. You have this kind of tangled bit that runs to a couple other places as well, actually. It runs from Hapston Cliffs to Port Charles and to Meast, which I can talk more about that in a second, but it also runs from Hapston Cliffs to Nikiri, which is a not a beach side, but it's up on bluffs. It is a resort town, sort of. And that connects to Lambit, and that connects to Galgora. So either one would be a step towards completing the narrow gauge mess, I guess I want to call it, that is to the west of Arturo and Meast, up in the mountains. More mountain building there. Pretty much all of this encompasses more mountain building, because we aren't quite out of the thick of it yet. Except for Temmeros 2 portal, actually. That ought to be a fairly short thing, except for me rebuilding Temmeros. So I decided to put all these trees down, manually. Turned out not so great, but I went with it anyways. Just to comment on the video for once. Now, okay. Other two things. Sorry, we had Arturo to Hapston Cliffs. That is single track. In the narrow gauge mess, there isn't any double track narrow gauge. There is double track narrow gauge on the main line between Olerston, Kapst Jct, Motico, and Scragcap and Meast. But that's it for double track narrow gauge. Anyways, we've got the Sure to Hapston Cliffs, very hard climb. In about the same distance, you can climb 100 feet. And hit Meast. And that is both narrow gauge and standard gauge. They take two very different paths to get up there. The narrow gauge is more direct and runs along the river before crossing over it and then heading to Meast. The standard gauge does this weird tanglefoot curve sort of thing to gain altitude without sacrificing much in the way of terrible hills. Of course, the squiggles I wrote on the map are up to interpretation by me at any point while building it. So, yeah, Arturo to Meast is single track narrow gauge, double track, standard gauge. Mainline in both cases anyways. And Meast is just a big cargo transfer point. You've got two big yards, big-ish, two decent-sized yards, but it's more focused on cargo transfer from one gauge to the other than it is on any industry, because there aren't any industries, I should say. Meast, however, gives the option to continue the main line to the north and to drive to Motico anyways, kind of completing the first loop of track and thus sentencing me to do a lot more terrain work. But that's irrelevant at the moment, because you'd have to complete the box with Kapst Jct to Motico, and Motico to Meast. Kapst Jct to Motico. No, now that that's the subject. Is double track, as I said. You meet up with the other line that isn't on the map, that has to do with the Skyfall cutoff. That was pre-Skyfall cutoff. The lake that we didn't yet build at Kapst, you follow the river that comes from it for a little while, then you cross over it. And that's the same river that feeds down into the Great Arturo Swamp. Just FYI. Motico, again, big yard, lumber mill. Now, we don't have a very... If that were to be the case, you don't have a very exceptional source of timber at this point. You do have the grizzly lumber, but that isn't really exceptional in terms of output, I should say. The other option, if you do want to get a lot of output, is Olerston to Kapst Jct. Now, aside from Arturo to Meast, I think this would add the most in terms of trackage to something we already have. It's already attached to the narrow gauge, and you'd be able to run Olerston, Kapst Jct to squeak it to Temmeros. And that's double track for part of the way, running into the woods there. Olerston is a big balloon loop sort of setup with a bunch of forestries. A bunch. Not just one, like several. I mean, they don't cut very much, but switching there is, it's not complicated. There's just a lot to do. You have to, you know, fetch full log cars from all these sidings and replace them with empties, blah blah blah. So, now that I've covered them all in detail, I think I did. I guess it's time to lay down... Well, I mean, you can use the names. So, for a refresher, with these last few minutes of the episode, and by last few minutes I mean final third, you know, I'm trying to think of anything that could fill this space. So things that add the most. Kapst Junction to Motico, Kapst Junction to Olerston, Arturo to Meast if you want to do the standard gauge. Kapst Junction to Olerston, of course, narrow gauge. Kapst Junction to Motico, narrow gauge. Everything here is narrow gauge except for Arturo to Meast. So if that sways your interest at all, Milky, I know you hate narrow gauge, so whatever. Trainist. So, Arturo to Meast is the only big, we do a lot more network stuff with the narrow gauge. And that's understandable, because your standard gauge is your main line, and your narrow gauge is your not. The funny thing is, if we go to Motico by any way, and then go to Scragcap, then we have an opportunity to do more standard gauge. But I don't expect you guys to go that way unless you really feel like doing it. That's all narrow gauge. So, you know, your options, starting from Temmeros to Portal, double track mainline, downgrade, slight, connection to Industry 1, Industry Singular, grain, connection to Portal, off map, double track, standard gauge, if I didn't say that already. Includes rebuild of Temmeros city and yard. Yards, plural. And junction. Galgora to Lambit, single track, uphill, 300 feet, change in elevation. Single track, narrow gauge, connection to industry forestry. Woods. More woods than mountains, but includes rebuild of Eldorado Canyon. Eldorado Canyon is the line down into Galgora, by the way, if you guys don't know. Arturo to Hapston Cliffs, 300 feet up, single track, narrow gauge, 3 foot. Connection to large yard, exceptional views, very mountains such wow. Twisty track. I don't really have any, Arturo to Meast. A double track standard gauge mainline, single track narrow gauge mainline. And 2 foot gauge. Don't quite know how the 2 foot gauge actually factors into this, but it's there now. So I've got to deal with it. Unless I'm going to send it up to Motico, which is an option, but probably not feasible. I could do that. I intend the 2 foot gauge to connect odd things. Yeah, you know what? That's going to be a sort of resolution for the 2 foot gauge. It's not going to connect towns that are already connected directly, I should say. But once again, the 2 foot gauge to Motico won't be built until both cities are already built because it isn't a actual contender. Anyways, Arturo to Meast, single track, narrow gauge, uphill 100 feet, double track standard gauge, uphill 100 feet. River crossing is already built, actually. 2 river crossings actually make that. I forgot. It provides connection to cargo transfer, but no industry. Kapst Junction to Motico. Double track, narrow gauge. Downhill, 100 feet. River crossing. I'm not sure what it would be in terms of views. Probably distant mountains. 2-track, narrow gauge. Connection to large yard and lumber mill for the narrow gauge. I should note that Galgora to Lambit is standalone at this point. Kapst Junction to Olerston. Connection between Kapst Junction and the tree farms for the east side of the map, pretty much. Double track, level, pretty much. You know, tree farms, balloon loop switching, not such in the way of amazing views, but for once easy running, I guess. You guys know I'm going to throw in something difficult anyways. It's kind of a shame that I have all these nice things and I have to ruin them by putting giant passes in the way. But, no, this is just going to be forested, I promise. Forested plateau. No real trouble there. Promise. Now, I'm really not sure what else to say here. I can comment on the other different kinds of connections that we could make after this, but I'll keep you guys in suspense. Just think about what you'd rather drive when I'm done with it. That incline to Lambit, so more trouble, but big payoff in terms of getting logs down to the port, but nothing really to do with those logs. Olerston would present an interesting connection for logs. Again, it's a dead end, but you get the logs and you bring them all the way down to Temmeros, transfer them, and then bring them down to the port. Or bring them out, you know, to Arturo, but they don't really have anything to do out there. Kapst Junction to Motico just presents a staging point. You could place logs and bring them to the lumber mill. That'd be an interesting thing, and then bring the lumber and stuff out. Actually, that just occurs to me. I would advocate, actually, for Kapst Junction to Motico, because if you can get logs from somewhere, bring them to Motico, convert them into wood chips, bring the wood chips bound through Kapst Junction to Temmeros, put them on another train, bring them to Arturo, and then you can't do anything with that because the wood chips is on the narrow gauge. Never mind, scratch what I said. Transform them again and switch them in. You have to do some playing with the multiple industries to get that. Arturo to Meast, connections, that's what it's good for. And Arturo to Hapston Cliffs, more yard. But the video is about to end. Remember to post your comment with what you want. I will post all the options down in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, even though it's late. Sorry about that. Was working on this. Not that this took up a lot of time. Hope you guys enjoyed that anyways. Train man saying goodbye. I was checking to see, this was a spot that I could have done. Anyways, train man out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.